Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the Divine Reality course. We're continuing with the implications of atheism, and in the last session we were discussing the meaning of life and the modern attempts to try and bridge that gap, fill that hole, and we saw why they fail and why they continue to fail. And what we're going to look at here now is how Islam provides the ultimate solution to the crisis of meaning people are experiencing today. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, chapter 59, verse 19, He says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Allah says, do not be like those who forgot Allah, who turned away from Allah, and because of this, Allah made them forget themselves. Those are the ones who are the true transgressors, the rebellious people, who cross all bounds. Here's a very important principle. And this particular ayah, the tafsir, the real world tafsir of this ayah is taking place all around us today. Nietzsche's work is a tafsir of this particular ayah, in actual facts, because he highlighted, that when you turned away from God, you don't know what your direction is now. You don't know where you're going to go. How are you going to make sense of anything? And Allah is telling us here, do not be like those who turned away from God, who forgot God, and therefore Allah made them forget themselves. Allah is telling us those that turn away from Allah, those who forget Allah, those who push Allah aside, Allah makes them unaware of their own selves, forgetful of their own selves. How do people forget themselves? I want you to think about this for a second. Because someone may say, well, no, today in the 21st century, we don't believe in God, but we don't forget ourselves, we take care of ourselves. We go to the gym, we have good diets, we bathe regularly, we do all of these things. We're taking good care of ourselves, we're not forgetting ourselves. But the reality here is what's being mentioned here is that they forget their true essence, their true nature, who they are as human beings. They forget their souls, and they forget what's good for their souls. When they're unaware of God, they're unaware of their purpose in life. They don't know why they exist in this world, what the purpose of being here is for the 50, 60, 70 years that we have. And if they don't know that, then they're not going to make the most of this life. And if they don't make the most of this life, well, then the hereafter, where are they going to end up? In the hellfire. So they're completely heedless. Those that turn away from God will have no way of navigating this life, knowing why they exist, knowing how to achieve the good in this life and in the hereafter. And this is the state of people today. They're completely unaware. They don't know why they exist in this world. They don't know why they were created. They don't know where they're going. That's the sad reality of affairs. It's just, in the absence of God, people are lost, completely lost. So the Islamic solution. Islam provides a comprehensive account of life. Allah tells us in the Quran why He created us. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That He did not create us for any other reason except to know Him and to worship Him. This is the ultimate purpose of our lives. Allah further informs us in the Quran, in Surah Mulk, that He is the one that created life and death to test which of us is best in deeds. So this life, this worldly existence is a test to see which of us will be truthful to Allah, see which of us will worship Allah, to see which of us would overcome the alluring nature of this material world that constantly pulls us and drags us away from Allah. To see which of us would be true worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the test. So that's why we exist in this world. To see which of us does good after acknowledging Allah, therefore can attain rewards from Allah, to attain the paradise, to evoke the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the next world, so that we can enter paradise by His leave. That's the objective of being here in this world. So this life is extremely significant from an Islamic perspective. We were created to worship Allah. We were put in this world to worship Allah, to overcome the trials and tribulations of this world, to attain rewards, to do good deeds, so that we can attain the hereafter. That's the complete story. Allah says in Surah Al-Kahf that He beautified the world. He made this world beautiful so that He can test which of us is best in deeds. And this again tells us, it highlights us that this life is a test. That's not to say that as Muslims we completely turn away from the world and that we go into a cave. No, this world is a means to worship Allah through. So if you have money, how do you spend that money? Do you spend that money in a way to worship Allah? Or do you spend the money in a way to indulge yourself and lose yourself? If you have aspects of the world, how do you use it for the sake of Allah? That's the key. It's not to turn away from the world. So in turning away from blind materialism, It doesn't mean you go into a cave. It means, no, you find that balance. You put things into perspective. Allah created you to worship Him, right? He put you in this world to worship Him. So use the world to worship Him to the best of your ability, right? So, and on top of this, not only does Islam put into perspective the meaning of life, why we exist, why we're here in this world, what's going to happen to us after death, everything is explained clearly. On top of this, ultimate justice makes sense, ultimate hope makes sense, ultimate value makes sense of the human being, purpose in life makes sense as we've discussed, and meaningful happiness. I mean, when you remember Allah, as Allah says, truly in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. So, and when you worship Allah, when you start fulfilling the purpose of your life, that's when true tranquility and happiness is going to enter your life. Because you're doing what you were created to do. You know, I always give the example, imagine you buy a car, petrol car, you drive it around, really nice car. And then when you run out of petrol, instead of putting petrol in the tank, you decide to put water in the tank. What's going to happen? Car's going to break down. It's because it's no longer doing what it was designed to do, functioning the way it was designed to function. We were designed and created to worship Allah. That's our spiritual nutrition. If we don't do that, we run after something else, we're going to break down. You know, when we do it, that's when we're going to find true tranquility, lasting happiness, lasting peace. And the entire message of the Quran revolves around these core themes, informing humanity of who they are in relation to Allah, why they were created, what they're doing on this earth. It puts all of the pieces of the puzzle in the right places. It makes sense of everything completely and comprehensively. Just as a last point, as we wrap up this section of the course, brothers and sisters, Islam not only provides us with the answer to the meaning of life and addresses ultimate justice, value, true happiness and all of these things, Islam also provides meaning to our suffering. And that's one of the biggest obstacles. And every human suffers. Every human being goes through suffering. Every human being goes through trials and tribulations in their life. But the reality is, without God, especially on atheism and naturalism, you can never understand your suffering. You can never make sense of your suffering. It's just this nasty obstacle, an accident within an accident. That's all it is. You can never make sense of your suffering. But from the Islamic perspective, we can make complete sense of suffering. Firstly, fundamentally, Allah says, as we mentioned already, life is a test. Tests are not supposed to be easy. You're going to go through hardships, trials, tribulations. You will be tested in many different ways, as Allah tells us in the Quran. So, suffering, hardships are a part of this life. It's a part of our test. Right? Suffering, on the other hand, also acts as an expiation for sins, as we know. Suffering allows us, it's an opportunity for us to draw closer to Allah. How many times when we're comfortable in life, we're quite far away from Allah? And then when we go through something difficult, a hardship, a trial, a tribulation, that's when we wake up. It's almost like a fast track to Allah, those moments. Because we turn back to Allah, we realize how weak we are, and we start to worship Him. Suffering develops us as human beings. It allows us to grow. It allows us to help other people as well. And there's so much. I mean, I'm just touching upon the surface, and we'll probably go into more detail in the problem of evil section on this particular point. But there's so much Islam provides as far as, providing meaning to our suffering. It contextualizes it in a very beautiful and comprehensive way. So, brothers and sisters, hopefully this section has been beneficial. Now that we've come to the end of this module, and one thing I want you to do after each sort of module or segment or argument that we cover is I want you to really work with it, because it's very easy for us to forget this stuff when we cover it, when we go through a course. Within a week, within a couple of days, you probably forget. So what I want you to do is I want you to write this down as a presentation. You can write as a poem, a short article, a play, a story. Write this down, these concepts down. So what we discussed in the implications of atheism, write it down and articulate it to yourselves. Right? Very important exercise. Articulate this to yourselves. Put it in your own words. Say it as you want. Change it up. Not a problem. But articulate this to yourself. Understand the concepts and the logic and the connections between the points that we've made. And that's going to help it solidify in your minds, inshallah. So that whenever you need to refer to these arguments or these points, you can always go back and refer to them. That being said, inshallah, when you guys are ready, move on to the next section.